My fiancé announced, "My ex-lover is my man of honor at our wedding, or there's no wedding." Narrated in first-person dark fiction, Cold Revenge. The message came on a Wednesday evening, a single line on my phone screen, illuminated against the dark of my office. "We need to talk. It's about the wedding." I remember staring at the words longer than necessary. The glow of the screen reflected in the glass wall of my office, fractured into ghostly duplicates. It was late. Too late for "we need to talk." The kind of late where truth no longer wears disguises. She arrived half an hour later. No knock, just the turn of her key in the lock. I stayed at my desk, posture controlled, pen moving across the contract in front of me as if nothing in the world could interrupt me. But she did. Her heels crossed the room like a metronome, each step tightening something in my chest. She stood in front of my desk. Her eyes were sharper than usual, rehearsed. "My ex," she began without prelude, "is going to be my man of honor at the wedding." The words dropped like steel into water, heavy, irreversible. I didn't answer. I watched the way her lips pressed shut afterward, as if expecting an argument, a fight, something explosive. Instead, I put down my pen, folded my hands, and asked quietly, "Or what?" Her chin lifted, defiant. "Or there's no wedding." There it was, a test, a line in the sand, a knife she thought I wouldn't see until it cut. I let the silence stretch until she grew uneasy under it. My heart was no longer racing. It was slowing, cold and deliberate. Finally, I said, "Your choice." And I meant it. She didn't know that, in that single instant, she had already lost me. For 3 nights I didn't sleep. Not really. I closed my eyes, but my mind replayed her words, dissecting each syllable like evidence in a trial. My ex. My man of honor. Or no wedding. The arrogance of it burned, the audacity of expecting compliance. But beneath the anger was something worse, the suspicion. Why him? Why now? Why stake our future on this? I began to see it everywhere. The late-night phone she thought I didn't notice. The quick swipes across the screen when I entered a room. The faint perfume on her blouse that wasn't her own. I wanted to tell myself it was paranoia, that the stress of work, the law firm, the never-ending property disputes, the clients clawing at each other, was bending me toward mistrust. But deep down, I knew. Truth leaves shadows before it leaves evidence, and she was covered in them. I began to watch her differently, not the way a lover watches, but the way a litigator studies a hostile witness. Every tone, every hesitation, every flicker of her eyes when she spoke became testimony. The puzzle wasn't whether she was lying, it was how long the lie had been living between us. I kept my distance, outwardly calm. I still brought her coffee in the mornings, still kissed her forehead before I left for the office. She smiled, relieved, thinking the storm had passed. But inside, I was already preparing for cross-examination. The first thing I did was secure her phone records, a quiet request through a contact who owed me a favor. Numbers repeated with unsettling regularity. One number in particular, a name I recognized before I even allowed myself to acknowledge it. Her ex. Late calls, long calls, hours of them. Some stretching past midnight when she told me she had fallen asleep early. The next move was her emails. A trace, a back-end crawl. Buried beneath promotional spam and vendor correspondence were threads, deleted but recoverable, where she wrote to him as though I didn't exist. Wedding updates, guest lists, dress fittings. She included him in details she never shared with me. I read them in silence, each line an incision, each word peeling away what little hope remained. I didn't confront her, not yet. Confrontation is for the desperate, and I am not desperate. I am precise. Instead, I visited the venue. I walked through the empty hall, the polished floors reflecting the chandeliers above. I imagined the night, the vows, the toast, the charade. My chest tightened, but my face remained blank. The manager asked me about final payments. I nodded politely, writing down figures, dates, deadlines. I already knew none of it would happen. On the drive back, I rehearsed the silence I would give her, the calm, the absence of fire. Because true devastation is not in shouting. It is in the stillness that follows. At home, she greeted me with a smile too bright, too eager. She poured wine, asked about my day, brushed against me as though nothing had shifted. But I saw her glances toward her phone, the way her thumb hovered, waiting for a vibration that never came. She didn't realize I had already rerouted his number. She didn't realize her messages landed where I could read them before he ever did. They wrote to each other in half-confessions, in cryptic tones, in nostalgia that dripped with old intimacy. And through every word, one truth crystallized. She wasn't inviting him to be her man of honor. She was preparing a stage for him. And I was the audience she thought too blind to see. The proof arrived in a single envelope. A private investigator's report. Photographs. Timestamps, locations, them, together. Hotel entrances, a quiet dinner at a corner table, her leaning too close, his hand on hers. Not just once, repeated, patterned, consistent. Infidelity documented in pixels and ink. I sat at my desk, the file open before me, and felt nothing. No rage, no grief, only clarity. It was over. It had been over long before she threatened me with ultimatums. That evening, I placed the envelope on the dining table. Nothing more, no note, no flourish, just truth waiting in plain sight. When she came home, she saw it instantly. Her hand trembled as she slid the papers out. Her eyes widened, lips parting, the air caught in her throat. I watched from the chair across from her, silent. She looked at me, tears welling. This isn't what it looks like. I raised a hand, calm, final. I already know what it looks like. The silence that followed was unbearable for her, but for me, it was oxygen. For once, she had no script, no rehearsed lines, no manipulation to lean on. Just exposure. I didn't scream. I didn't accuse. Instead, I made a call in front of her. To the venue, to the caterer, to the florist. One by one, I canceled everything. Each call brief, professional, detached. Refunds processed, dates cleared, deposits returned. She watched, horror blooming across her face, realizing in real time that the wedding was dissolving before her eyes. When I hung up the last call, I slid a document across the table. An itemized bill for my half of the costs. Her voice cracked. You can't be serious. I met her eyes, my tone flat. Consider it compensation. For fraud. She tried to speak, but her phone buzzed, his name flashing across the screen. I let it ring, then picked it up, pressed it into her palm. Answer it, I said quietly. Tell him he's paying now. Her breath hitched. What do you mean? I leaned back, a faint smile tugging at my lips. The venue's gone. The vendor's refunded. If there's going to be a wedding, it's his responsibility now. His cost, his burden, not mine. Her face collapsed in disbelief, realization crashing over her like cold water. When he discovered it, the debt, the destroyed plans, the financial trap he'd inherited, he would understand the price of stepping into my role, and she would understand the price of betraying me. I left her there at the table, staring at the broken remains of her scheme. The silence of the apartment was thicker than her sobs. I didn't look back. Not when I walked out the door, not when the elevator closed between us. On the drive home, I thought about all the years wasted, all the trust squandered. But the bitterness dissolved quickly, replaced by something sharper, cleaner. Vindication. There are wounds that bleed, and then there are wounds that cauterize instantly, burning shut with finality. This was the latter. I didn't need her apologies. I didn't need her tears. What I needed was already mine, the truth, and with it, control. I parked outside the law firm, the city lights flickering across the windshield. For the first time in weeks, I exhaled without weight. She had gambled my love against her lies. She lost. I would not mourn her. I would not forgive her. I would remember only this. When she told me it was him or no wedding, she believed she had power. She never realized that by giving me that choice, she had already handed me the knife, and I used it exactly as intended. She wanted her ex to stand beside her at the altar, so I left her, standing alone in the ruins instead.